morning, and Saturday the 19th of March. I must be a time traveller. Oh, dearie me. Woo. Saturday the 19th of January 2019. I nearly made a cock up then, didn't I? God, if I did. Let's not lie, I did make a cock up. So, although I work excruciatingly long hours, and I work a lot during the course of a week, in fact, even with overtime. Yo, Aberdeen bus, what's going on? So, even though I work a lot, on my downtime, when I like to relax, I like to contemplate, you know, matters of the universe. Just wonder, just ponder, you know, think about why things are the way they are. AJ, good morning. You know, and sometimes I'll pick a topic, it could be anything, right? And I'll sit and I'll ponder and I'll wonder and I'll do research on what I'm thinking, you know, and I've come to an idea. You can all laugh at me if you want, it's all good. It's just my idea. I could be wrong. In fact, I'm probably going to be proven wrong, but it's okay. I've got an idea as to why Mars is a dead planet. And there's a few interconnecting things going on with this. First thing, what we need to understand about Mars is it is a smaller planet. So we all know it's a smaller planet, and it has 39 how can I put it? Only 39% of the Earth's gravity on Mars. But because it's a smaller planet, and hear me out on this, because I'm probably going to get shot down anyway, but at least have the grace to let me speak. Alright, so Mars being further away from the sun and being a smaller planet, in the creation of the solar system, would have cooled down quicker than Earth. Okay, so while Earth was still a smouldering pile of rubble and rock tumbling around the sun, Mars would have probably already been formed and was already in that, or even halfway through that cooling process. Okay, so Mars would have cooled down long before Earth, and because it's still within that Goldilocks zone, that not too hot, not too cold, it would have had liquid water on the surface. It's been proven it used to have water, and it's in that Goldilocks zone. And because it was a fresh planet, it had a molten core, and that molten core produces what? A magnetosphere. It had a magnetic shield essentially around it, like very similar, if not identical, to what we have around Earth. The magnetosphere is what protects us from the sun, basically, and it shields us from all kinds of deadly radiation, and it also protects our atmosphere from being blasted away by solar wind. And the reason why you've probably clicked on this today is because you saw a picture of something that looked like a giant pimple. That there is the biggest volcano in the solar system. Science teacher Chris. I like that. So what we have on Mars is we have the biggest volcano in the solar system, and it's known as Olympus Mons. Olympus Mons is 25 kilometers tall. Let's put that into perspective. If Olympus Mons was on Earth, it would be the size of France. That's a big volcano. I mean, it would rival the size of some US states. It's large. So why is Mars dead? Mars is dead because it has no atmosphere. I squeaked a bit then. Mars is dead because it has no atmosphere. It has no atmosphere because its molten core, something has happened to it. No one knows what. Okay? It has no molten core to create a magnetosphere. You see? So it's not being protected from the sun. And the solar wind has blown away all of its atmosphere by and large. And you've got to remember, the gravity on Mars is only 39% that of Earth, you see, but the size of a planet doesn't equate to the mass of a planet. You can have something really, really small, but have an immense mass. You know, so I think Mars would have had a much denser mass a good few million years ago. And this is why it all links back to Olympus Mons. Just imagine. Now here's where your tinfoil hats come along. Stick them on, you may enjoy this. My theory as to why Mars is dead. Because it would have evolved quicker than us, okay? Just imagine, use your imagination. Imagine that life on Mars evolved. Imagine, even for the sake of a 1 million year difference, imagine life evolved on Mars. A million years is a long time. All right, imagine if it had some kind of civilization and they knew that they had a super clusterfuck of a volcanic eruption about to happen. Imagine that. Just put your tinfoil hats on and just imagine. All right, now imagine the biggest volcanic eruption you could ever imagine. An eruption so big, so colossal, that almost the entire contents of the planet's core was ejected through the pimple called Olympus Mons. Imagine that for a sec. Imagine if whoever lived there was smart enough to know it was going to happen and left. And imagine they ended up here. Imagine we are them. Okay? Tinfoil hat time. You know, these are the things that you just think about these things. It's like maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I can't prove it happened, the same as no one can prove it didn't, realistically. So imagine Mars is dead because of a humongous volcanic eruption where it ejected, let's do my maths correctly now, 61% of its core, thus leaving 39% of it. All right, 61%, yeah, about that. Imagine if it ejected most of its innards. That molten core is then floating around in space. That could have actually become the asteroid belt between Mars and Earth. You know, just blobs of material floating around, cooling down, and then become, you know, the asteroid belt, and it is literally the cooled remains of the innards of Mars. Just saying, it could be. Okay. And then because Mars has ejected its core through this pimple called Olympus Mons, it then has no way of generating its own magnetosphere, its own magnetic force field that protects it. And because it's had a volcanic eruption, because it's ejected all of that crap, not only into space, but into its atmosphere. See, the atmosphere would have been polluted, it would have been covered in ash, the whole planet would be covered in debris, volcanic debris. And because of that, it has no magnetosphere. So what happens to the atmosphere? Because there's nothing to protect it, the solar wind literally strips the planet of a majority of its atmosphere, leaving whatever atmosphere it has clinging to that tiny bit of gravity. Mars could be dead, literally, down to the forces of nature. Imagine if Yellowstone was to erupt. Just imagine. Imagine it was 2 or 3 times bigger. And imagine if it erupted so badly that it covered the entire planet in ash and that everything died. And then all of that lava, all of that magma exploded out so violently that it went into space. Earth pretty much would cease. It would. If it ejected out that much of its innards, it wouldn't have that much of a core left to produce a barrier, that magnetic barrier. Even our atmosphere could go. So it's just an idea. This is the sort of gump that goes through my head. You know, when I've got usually just before I go to sleep, I think about these things. You see, I think about this just before I go to sleep. If I have a deep thought just before I go to sleep, it helps me sleep. Let's read some of these comments. Hi Chris, I'm good, hope you're well. Tim Blackburn. Oh mate, I'm alright. Science teacher Chris. It looked like a pancake. It did look like a pancake, Olympus Mons, but the thing is, what you got to remember, is it's 25 kilometres tall. That's big. You should be a teacher, mate. Yeah, you say that. I hate cyclists too. They went, what makes me laugh is they're going to go all the way up and around, they're going to come back in a minute. You're a very intelligent man, Chris. Best way to describe you. Cheers, Ross. I wouldn't say I was very intelligent, I just have a lot of pondering power. The power to ponder. GTA bus driver, what's going on? Sergeant Major Patrick Harper. What did you study at school, Chris? Not a great deal. I tell you what I studied at school. Music, graphics and art. Along with the basics of, English, maths and blah, blah. I didn't really leave school with a great deal, to be fair, but I consider myself to be a somewhat intelligent person. I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I pay attention. And the thing is, all of these different things which I've said to you this morning about Mars, majority of what I've said is actual fact, so Olympus Mons is there, it is that big. It would have had to erupt violently over a prolonged amount of time in order to get that big. Mars doesn't have a magnetosphere. If it does, it's extremely small. And the solar wind has blown Mars's atmosphere away. And the only way Mars can have such a small mass for its size is purely because its insides would have to have been ejected somewhere. And I'm just saying, maybe it's a possibility that its insides were ejected through Olympus Mons, hence its size, hence Mars's low gravity, because it has a lower mass. I mean, if you was to put it this way, if you was to take a neutron star, I believe it's a neutron star, where neutrons are literally packed so tight together that it has a mass that if you was to take a cubic centimetre of it like that, it would weigh more than our sun. You see, that's mass. Let's see. So you can have something smaller than Earth, which is Mars, which has potentially the same gravity as Earth if it still had its core. But because it ejected its core, in my belief, see, I can't prove that. This is the thing that no one understands, is why Mars's core cooled down. You see, and it can't be because of its rotation, because it's very similar to Earth's. It can't be because of how far it is from the sun, because it's within that Goldilocks zone. It would be noticeably cooler, but it would be livable. So why did Mars cool down? The only explanation, really, is it would have to have had its insides ejected somehow, and I believe it happened through Olympus Mons. So scientists out there, prove me wrong. If you think anything I've said is complete bunkum, then please feel free to debunk me, and I will happily listen to what the truth actually is. Like I said, I like to do a little bit of research and throw a little bit of theory in there as well. I like my educated guesses in life. Morning, Professor Chris. Good morning, Roy West. Lucky you, I only got 2 bloody options. I left school with in fact, I got an A for art and a C for music. That was not. That is really interesting. I would never have learnt about that anywhere. Well, this is true. I do come out with some really weird, obscure things sometimes, but it's just my idea. I'm not going to say anything in this video as to how Mars is dead as fact. It's just my opinion and my idea as to why I believe Mars is a dead planet. I believe, until I'm proven wrong, that Mars ejected its core through Olympus Mons, which is the biggest volcano in the solar system, and I believe because of that it destroyed the planet's atmosphere to start with, and then it had no magnetosphere to protect it from the sun's solar wind, and then the solar wind over millions of years blew away the rest of the atmosphere, leaving Mars dead and lifeless. So anyway, tell me what you think in the comments below. If you know anyone of any kind of scientific stature at all that can prove me wrong, or even do a little bit of digging and maybe even prove me right, then please let them know. Be interesting to get some professional opinion on my idea. Be good, Stay safe.